Hello, good evening. My name is Keshia Javis-Jones. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I served 10 years in the Marine Corps as a combat veteran, and I'm also a member of the GI Film Fest Advisory Committee. On my full-time job, I am the Director of Operations at Workshops for Warriors, and I do my best to support the veteran community throughout San Diego. One of the other things that I do and I'm very passionate about is that I am an ambassador for Foundation for Women Warriors. So I am honored to be hosting this panel this evening, and on behalf of KPBS, our festival organizers, volunteers, and filmmakers, thank you all for joining us for the final Showtime Woman Warrior Block. With us this afternoon are a number of the talented filmmakers behind the films that we just watched. Brian Graves, director of Charlotte Mansfield, A Woman Photographer Goes to War. Jennifer Karady, director of Soldier Stories, From Iraq and Afghanistan, The Artist's Process. Kay Barnes, an Army veteran and director, Budding Creativity. And Paige Compton, Army veteran and director of Guide On. Thank you all very much for being here. So Brian, I'm going to start with you. What drew you to Charlotte's story, and why do you think it was important to tell?
Hey, thank you. I really got lucky with this project. A friend of mine at the World War II Institute at Florida State University wanted to do a documentary film involving their collections, and they weren't sure which collection they wanted to feature. So I went for a visit, and Charlotte's World War II scrapbooks really jumped out at me. One, because she had a great eye, and she took these amazing World War II photographs. The other thing was that I'd never seen World War II photographs like that. Like before doing this project, I guess, the number one image that would come to my mind when I would think about women during World War II is Rosie the Riveter and women laborers on the home front. And so looking through her scrapbooks was kind of a revelation for me that women were doing all of these other jobs during the war that I wasn't aware of. And so I worked with researchers at the Institute and started to discover her story. And yeah, so I guess to the second part of your question, what's important about it, I guess to reveal that history and to try to shed light on what women were doing during World War II. And there's so many other stories of women in the war. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. So there's a lot of work to be done in that area.
I totally agree with you, Brian, and thank you very much. Women have been serving in war for a very long time. Like you said, there's not many stories out there, and it's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jennifer, you work with many veterans through the Artist Project. What are some things that were unique about the stories and experiences that you had through the women?
Well, yeah, I've worked with probably 5 female veterans now, and one thing I've noticed is that their stories kind of came more fully formed and initially. So, and they were a little bit more kind of spiritual and really reflective, and kind of creative also in the way that in their kind of storytelling. So yeah, and Lucy's story in particular, I was really compelled by because it took place, in the space of a kitchen, which is such a domestic space. No one ever would think that the war would kind of intrude in that sphere. So, and then also I think many of the female veterans, talking about their kids and how their kids have been affected is also kind of has been a big part of what I hear from female veterans.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. It's kind of full circle. No matter where they are, you still have a family and children and everything. And I think that's one thing, even with myself in war, that made it easier to tell the story, you know, once you've accepted it. Thank you. Kay, you're a veteran, a filmmaker, a creator. What motivated you to share the story?
Thank you for having me today. One of the things that really motivated me to share this story is I've been living on a military base and being on a military base for so long. And COVID really changed things and forced everybody to go into this sense of isolation. And I really needed to get out myself and reconnect with my creativity, with who I was as a person, deal with some of the trauma that I had, you know, inside and outside of the military. And I missed connecting with my neighbors and my my fellow soldiers. And so I started doing this thing kind of as a way to reconnect with that from an inner level. And it really just expanded outward for me. And I think it was really good for other people because it got us connecting with each other again.
Yes, thank you, Kay. I will tell you that's one reason why I'm very active in the veteran community is because once you take the uniform off, that's still a huge part of your life. And, you know, nothing's more important than connecting and nothing more important than sharing the stories, which is one reason why I love being a part of GI Film Festival is sharing it, you know, not just within our circle, but with everyone and letting everyone get the firsthand of, you know, our lives and things that go on throughout the military and the history. Thank you. Paige, Guide On is based off of your experience in boot camp, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So how does the film differ, if at all, from your story as a whole in your experience?
The what we ended up with Guide On is like a very, very light version of what I actually experienced in basic training. So as far as my experience is concerned, the drill sergeant that was giving me a bunch of, you know, crap was a male drill sergeant, and he literally told me that he had never had a female guide on bearer before, and like threw the guide on at me, and then proceeded to try to find different ways to like test me and try to break me throughout the rest of basic training. Like basic training is already really hard, like mentally, emotionally, physically. And then you add that element on top of it. The hardest part for me was finding what part to tell in this story, because my personal story was so big and expansive, and like finding what section do I tell. And so I took like a few points throughout my basic training, and I distilled them into what would be like the first 24 hours of our character's experience, and tried to really just nail down and distill like what the story was really about, and go from there.
Great. Paige, we have a question from the audience. So where was it filmed?
It was filmed in, oh gosh, it was filmed at the end of 2019, so bear with me. It was filmed on this, we had a location originally like up in the mountains in Southern California, but it snowed a week before we were supposed to film, and so we had to find a location last minute, and we ended up finding this like old abandoned mental institution, believe it or not, that was turned into a filming location down in, I want to say it was, oh God, not Pasadena, Tacoma, I think is what it was called. All I know is it was about an hour from where I live. So it's an hour before, you know, filming, and then an hour after driving. But this company kind of took it over and has been upkeeping it. And I I just about died when we toured it on location, because it was so similar to the environment of basic training and like just government, like, you know, military bases. Like there's like a vibe where it's like kind of like an office, but kind of like also there's something about that government flavor that's just so specific. And this place really captured it. And I just, it was funny to me that it was a formal mental institution. For all of you vets out there, you know.
And then one more question. What was Beryl's real name?
Say that again?
Beryl's real name.
Her real name?
Yes.
Like, what was the actress's name?
Uh-huh.
Chantel Lee Cuevas. Extremely talented. You can find her in New York City.
Great. Thank you very much, Paige. All right, Brian, I'm going to go back to you. What message would you want what's the message that you want to share with this film?
I guess I'll share a message that Charlotte would share with people. So she, later in life, she would mentor younger people in photography and would tell them you have to do something other than what's expected of you. And to me, that sort of encapsulates her life, but also, you know, the story of women in the military more broadly. You know, so I guess when she entered the military in World War II, the Women's Army Corps was really designed to relieve men of different duties so they could go fight and go to combat. And but women created opportunities for themselves. You know, with Charlotte, it was photography, but other women did similar things. They did things that went beyond the expectations laid out for them by the military, or their assigned job roles, and achieved successes that went beyond the job descriptions. And that to me, that's what's so cool about her story. You know, no one wrote the guidebook for her. She was feeling her way out around in the dark and finding opportunities where she could, and sort of creating the role that she wanted. So at least, from my limited perspective, that's a message that I found inspiring. Yeah.
Thank you. Persevering in uniform as a woman. Myself, I went in as an administrator. When I served in combat, I was a lioness, which is female search team engager. And then I was a regional Toys for Tots coordinator, a reserve career planner, and a regional funeral honors coordinator. So I did a lot of things while I was in the service. And I think, women in military, just as their brothers, they work hard, but they always, go above and beyond to make sure they're filling the shoes all the way. They making sure they're making a name for themselves and doing so much for so long for so many people. And you can see it from that story, even back from World War II, and definitely still to present day, as I just left the service in 2014.
Yeah, well, thank you for your service. Yeah, and thank all of you. Yeah.
Thank everyone who's listening for you all's service. Thank you. So Jennifer, I'm going to ask you the same question. What's that message that you want this film to share?
Well, the film is really about the process of this that I go through with each veteran that I make a photograph with, so I made the film, to kind of give more transparency to the process, and I really made it actually originally for exhibitions. When I exhibit the photographs in museums, it gives viewers another way to connect with the photographs and see what's behind them. But the project as a whole and the film, is really intended to help civilians better understand soldiers and what they go through when they come home. And then also, for veterans to also be able to relate to the photographs and see themselves reflected, feel seen, so that maybe they don't feel so alone. And I think actually in our era of with so much like trauma from the pandemic, I think we actually have a lot to learn from these stories, and how soldiers have learned to cope, veterans have learned to cope with trauma. So I think we can take some of that, us civilians can take some of that into this present moment as well.
Very, very meaningful, Jennifer. It's very, very hard as a veteran returning to share your story, and you know, just doing just that, and in a way that you still feel it's enlightening, you know, and warm, and you don't feel as vulnerable when it's connected to something like art. So very, very meaningful message, means a lot to me. I know that it was hard. My family didn't hear my story until 4 years after I left the service. And it's not something you share when you're going through it. So thank you. Kay, what message do you want to share from this film?
Yeah, I just want people to be open to that thing that's calling at them from the inside. And it may come from a place where that feels familiar, but you're a little scared to explore or whatnot. Mine, like I said in the film, came from my grandmother, and I kind of just really reached into that. And I felt like I didn't have a lot at the time, but I did. Like I said, I could garden. I didn't require a lot. And you never know where connection is going to come from, or healing is going to come from. And I know a lot of times veterans are searching for healing from, you know, either combat or just life in general, or the, you know, the separation anxiety of separating from something you've known your whole entire career. And for me, this really provided that. And I know that the arts can be that a lot for veterans, and it can be their outlet. So I just want people to know to look for that creativity and that outlet in the most unassuming places. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, very important. Separation anxiety is just that. For myself, it was just identifying as a Marine for so long and not knowing who Keisha was anymore. And, you know, it's something that I feel that we all go through when you take that uniform off and you're trying to find out how to be just as impactful in your civilian careers as you are outside. So, Kay, I have a question for you from the audience. As a woman veteran, what kind of impact has storytelling and filmmaking had on you?
Oh my goodness, it's been phenomenal for me. I have a few projects in the works right now that I'm very excited about, especially a particular feature project that is getting quite some traction for a script I wrote. And it has provided an outlet for me to tell for stories that aren't out there. It's provided a way for people like me to do the Vanessa Gillians and all those types of stories. And, you know, in the past, that would have never been done, like, or it would have been shunned to do it, or even just the experience itself of being a woman in the military. So I am personally incredibly excited to be able to do films and tell our stories as well, because they matter. And, you know, it's our time. It's the perfect time.
Well, we look forward to seeing what's next. Paige, I'm going to ask you the same question. You know, what impact has storytelling had, you know, on yourself?
I mean, I don't know how I can follow Kay's answer. That was beautiful. Very well put. I've been in love with stories since I was a kid, and I feel like stories, no matter what walk of life you choose, whether you know, join the military or the Peace Corps or just go to college or whatever, like, stories help us to understand ourselves, help us to understand our fellow humans, and they do heal. They do help in a way. Like, that was something actually harkening back to basic training. That was something that we actually did like every Sunday, because we had Sundays off, quote unquote. And me and the females in our barracks, we would have movie nights where we didn't actually watch movies, but we like retold our movies in detail, like to each other. We'd gather around the bunks and it would be like, okay, you know, Thompson, it's your turn tonight. What movie do you got? And they're like, oh, I'm going to tell you Jaws. And like, we just retell our favorite movies, like scene by scene in detail. And we just all sit there and like try to imagine the scenes, even if we hadn't seen the movie before. And like that kept us going. Like we looked forward to that on Sundays. So like stories in so many different ways can really bring people together. And in, you know, in the military, as we know, you have people from all over the world. Like it's just like a hodgepodge of all kinds of life stories. So I mean, I feel like just as military, as veterans, like as or active duty, whoever's listening, it's like the favorite thing we do. We love to sit around and just shoot the, you know, I don't know if I can say it, but you get it. Like, you know, smoke pits, all of that. Like we're always telling stories about everything we've been through and so on and so forth. And it's like the greatest culture building tool that we have. And it's so powerful. And I'm going to get off my soapbox now and move on to the next person.
No, thank you. That's great, Paige. And then I went around the table and I asked everyone, but I kind of went out of order. But Paige, I want to know, you know, what's the message that you want to share from this film? Guide on.
I mean, our main core message is just go for it. Like, you know, go whatever you want. You know, we're telling it in the world of the military, but ultimately, like if you have something that you dream of, something that you want, just go do it. Like at least try. You know, you might, you know, hit some trials and tribulations along the way, but at least try to get it. You know, the biggest, most important thing for me in this film is the relationship between the drill sergeant and our main character, because the drill sergeant sees something in her, you know, like, and she's testing her. And she's really trying to teach her what it means to lead. Like, okay, you want to hold a flag, great, but that's still a leadership position. Like you have to understand the responsibilities that come with that, and like just that taking her under her wing, like mentorship, and how important that is. Because I don't know how many former drill sergeants are listening right now, but you guys get a bad rap in the movies. You know, the drill sergeants I knew, yeah, they were tough, yeah, they put us through a lot. But ultimately, what I saw was these mentors that genuinely cared about our well-being and where we were going to go after we left. Like, would we survive? Would we have the skills to be able to continue on, like if we're deployed or whatever? And I really wanted to try to bring that into this story. So, yeah, I think that answered the question.
Very much so answered the question, Paige. Very much so. Thank you. And you're right. They do get a bad rep, but I think if everyone goes back to boot camp, they have that one person that was their drill instructor or drill sergeant or whatever the term is they use, whether their branch of service, that just pushed them to a place that they didn't even know they could do it themselves, you know? And it builds that better soldier or Marine or sailor, you know, and it gets you ready, you know, for everything else you have to look forward to in the military and all the challenges that you're going to have in uniform. Brian, so what do you think Charlotte would have thought about how the role of women in service has been transformed? I love that question. It's from the audience.
That's a wow. It's a great question. I don't feel like I can speak for her though, and you know, I think she was someone, you know, I'm sure she would be pleased with progress, but also, you know, realizing that there's still work to be done, and you know, yeah, I guess I'll go back to the fundamental thing about her that I really like, you know, is that I think she was just someone who wouldn't let other people write her script for her, you know? And so I don't know if she would have been satisfied with the contemporary military or not, but I think she was sort of a striver, and yeah, someone who's always just trying to better herself, and I'd make the world a better place. And so so I don't know. I mean, I'd certainly be interested in hearing y'all's thoughts as living people about whether you like the contemporary landscape of women in the military. But yeah, I don't feel like I could answer that question for Charlotte. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, very understandable.
Yeah.
Would any of the other ladies, Kay or Paige, would you like to jump in on how you feel about the transformation of women in the service? Go ahead, Paige.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I mean, it's pretty incredible just doing the research just on my own. I mean, I went in and I was just like, I'm going to go do this thing, and like did my thing and all of that. But it wasn't until after I got out, because I got out in 2015, so very similar to you. And that I went back and did the research, and it was, I mean, I was in, when women were first allowed to enter combat roles. Like, we went to combat, but we couldn't actually be a part of the combat roles. And I know that I was denied, because in my experience, I did all the secret squirrel stuff. I was on the, that side. And there was this company that came through when I was working at the NSA that was recruiting, and they're like, we're going to teach you all this James Bond stuff, and we're going to teach you how to like go out and do teams of 2, and you're going to integrate with the system, and you're going to put up broadcast things and blah, blah, blah. Cause I did audiovisual in the Army. And I was like, sign me up for that. That sounds amazing. You're going to teach me how to do all this cool stuff. And like, they're like, but females, like you guys, you'll still keep up with the PT test. You'll get your 300s, right? But you'll stay back and you'll be support. And I was like, I don't want to do that. But it wasn't until after the fact that I realized, like, it's only been like 20 years, maybe 25 years since women have really been kind of active in like prominent roles. Mostly it's been like nursing and all of that, or some like Mulan kind of stuff, where they're like hiding who they are so they can actually contribute in the way that they want to contribute. And I think we're just starting to get on the precipice of doing something incredible and being like fully committed, contributing members instead of being looked at as like secondary, which is amazing to me.
I agree. I totally agree. Go ahead, Kay. You're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that, of course we still have a way to go, but I think it's phenomenal the amount of change that is happening in the services for women. I was one of 2 women to graduate in my officer candidate school class, and it was a lot. And I had to deal with a lot of, we got to be careful because, she's a girl, like, all that stuff. And so I just think it's amazing that we have women in leadership roles now in the different services. Like, we have women in combat roles. Like, this is phenomenal that women are no longer being barred from being who they want to be and serving how they want to serve. And, I'm sure there are still those people stigmatizing them out there about, now we got to do things different. But why not? Like, why not now? Why wouldn't you have been doing things different anyway? So I think it's phenomenal that this change has happened, and it's very empowering and almost like emotional for me. Like I said, coming from a place of seeing so very few people around me in leadership roles as a woman, it's really great.
I agree. It is amazing. And I'm glad I'm able to see it. It's wonderful. So we're almost out of time, but Jennifer, I hear you might be working on something around the 4th of July. Could you share a little bit about that project?
Sure. Yeah, I have a kind of related project called Dissonance, it's an immersive sound and video installation that's about, and it's inspired by the many, many stories soldiers have told me over the years about the 4th of July and how fireworks sound similar to the dangerous sounds of war. But this is like a very different kind of piece in that it's an immersive installation that's, and you hear veterans talking about the 4th of July, and but it's really meant to help the viewer, the person in the installation, actually feel a little bit of what a veteran might feel when they react to fireworks or hear fireworks. So it's experiential. So, and
Wow.
yeah, if anyone has any 4th of July stories, you can email me through my website. Because I'm still recording stories for that.
That's wonderful, Jennifer. And I'll email you my first 4th of July story, and maybe it'll add to what you're working on right now. Well, I would like to thank all of you very much for taking the time to be on this panel, which, you know, this is our last discussion of the 2021 GI Film Festival San Diego. So thank you all. Well, again, like I've said, this is our final screening and discussion for GI Film Festival San Diego 2021. I hope that you all enjoyed it, and thank you all for being here. Remember that access to rent all the films for this year's festival will still be available with the on-demand option on the website, gifilmfestivalsd.org. Access to rent and watch the films will be available until Wednesday, just until Wednesday. Thank you all who were involved in making this virtual festival a success and possible to everyone out there. Thank you to my fellow advisory committee members, the Film Consortium San Diego, our filmmakers, and our festival sponsors and partners. The California Arts Council, Scottina Daniels Communication, National University, Task and Purpose, and the San Diego International Airport Arts Program. In the email reminder that you got for this screening, there's a link to our attendee survey. This is a very important survey. Please just take a few minutes to do it. Your feedback is going to help us make a better festival for 2022 GI Film Festival San Diego. Again, thank you all out there. Thank you all for your service, and thank you all for taking a part in GI Film Festival San Diego 2021. Have a good evening.